I never thought my own brother would shatter a champagne bottle against my skull for refusing to give him my condo. Blood streaming down my face, I stumbled out of my parents' house as 100 horrified guests watched. My family thought they could bully me into submission. Instead, I walked away with stitches in my head and a plan for justice. 3 weeks later, I returned with a deed to their house and watched their smug faces crumble as they realized what I'd done. Before I dive into this nightmare, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, hit that like button if you've ever had to stand up to entitled family members, and subscribe to join our community of survivors. Trust me, you'll want to stick around for how this wild story ends. I'm Hazel Mitchell, a 34-year-old software engineer with a comfortable life I built entirely on my own. My $660,000 condo in Brookside Heights isn't just a home. It's the physical manifestation of every sacrifice I've made and every obstacle I've overcome. The marble countertops in the kitchen? Those represent the 3 years I worked overtime while my friends were out enjoying their 20s. The floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city skyline? That's what giving up vacations for 5 straight years looks like. Every square inch of that 1,100 square foot space represents my independence, something I've fought for since childhood. Growing up in the Mitchell household meant learning early that there were different rules for different children. My parents, Gloria and Kenneth Mitchell, never tried to hide their favoritism toward my brother Tyler. He was their golden child, athletic, charming, and blessed with our father's charismatic smile. I was the afterthought, the awkward, studious daughter who apparently didn't deserve the same opportunities. Tyler needs these new cleats for football, Hazel. You understand, don't you? Mom would say, as I wore the same worn-out sneakers for another school year. Your brother has so much potential. By 16, I was working part-time at the local grocery store while maintaining straight A's. Tyler crashed his second car that same year, a sweet 16 gift from our parents, and received a third one within a month. Boys will be boys, Dad chuckled as he handed Tyler the keys to a newer model than the one he'd totaled. I still remember the kitchen table conversation during my senior year when I brought up college applications. We've set aside money for Tyler's education at State, Mom explained. He's got a partial athletic scholarship, but we'll cover the rest. What about my college fund? I asked, knowing the answer before the words left my mouth. Dad cleared his throat. Hazel, you're smart. You can get scholarships. Besides, the community college has excellent programs. I did attend community college, working 30 hours a week while taking a full course load. After 2 years of exhaustion and ramen noodles, I earned a full scholarship to Westlake University for their computer science program. The day I received my acceptance letter, my parents barely acknowledged it. They were too busy celebrating Tyler's mediocre performance at a local football game. After graduation, I moved into a tiny studio apartment and started my career at a tech startup. I lived on the bare minimum, investing every spare dollar. 6 years of strategic career moves later, I became a senior developer at Nexus Technologies with a salary that finally matched my expertise. Meanwhile, Tyler bounced between jobs, always with a new can't-miss opportunity that inevitably failed. Tyler married Vanessa right after college. They quickly had 2 children, Aiden, now 10, and Sophia, 7. Despite my complicated feelings about my brother, I adore my niece and nephew. I've always made sure to be present at their birthdays and school events, even when my brother and sister-in-law made pointed comments about my fancy job and selfish lifestyle. While I was saving for my condo, my parents' financial situation deteriorated. Dad's construction business suffered during the recession, and instead of downsizing, they kept borrowing against their home equity to fund Tyler's series of failed ventures, a sports memorabilia shop, a food truck, and most recently, a revolutionary fitness app that never made it past the concept stage. 3 years ago, I finally had enough for a down payment on my dream condo. The day I signed the papers was the proudest moment of my life. No one from my family attended the housewarming party I threw, despite having 6 weeks' notice. Tyler had a networking event that apparently couldn't be missed. The condo itself is everything I ever wanted: 2 bedrooms, One converted to a home office, 2 bathrooms, an open-concept kitchen and living area, and a small balcony where I grow herbs and flowers. The building has a gym, a rooftop pool, and 24-hour security. It's my sanctuary, my achievement, my proof that I didn't need anyone's help to succeed. In the months before Tyler's birthday party, I noticed my family's comments about my living situation becoming more frequent and pointed. "Must be nice to have all that space just for yourself," Mom remarked during a rare visit to my place. "You know, Aiden and Sophia could really use their own rooms," Tyler mentioned over Thanksgiving dinner. "This house is getting cramped with 4 of us."
I didn't think much of it then.
I should have recognized the red flags for what they were, the early signs of an entitlement that would eventually explode in violence and betrayal. The invitation to Tyler's 40th birthday party arrived in my email inbox on a Tuesday morning in April. "Join us for a milestone celebration." Read the subject line, with the details showing a Saturday evening party at my parents' suburban home. My first instinct was to make an excuse. A work emergency, perhaps, or a sudden illness. After years of disappointment, family gatherings had become exercises in smiling through passive-aggressive comments and biting my tongue. But then the text started. "You have to come to Tyler's party," Mom wrote. "It's a special celebration and the whole family will be there." Dad called the next day. "Hazel, your brother would be devastated if you weren't there. We're planning something important." Even Tyler, who rarely contacted me except to ask for tech support, sent a message. "Hey sis, really hope you can make it Saturday. There's something we want to talk to you about." My friend Olivia noticed my distraction when we met for coffee that Thursday. She's been my closest friend since college, and she knows my family history all too well. "They're laying it on thick this time," she commented, stirring her latte. "Any idea what this important thing might be?" I shrugged. "Probably another investment opportunity for Tyler's latest doomed business idea." Olivia's expression turned serious. "Hazel, remember Thanksgiving? Your mom kept making those comments about sharing wealth within the family and how property is just a material thing?" I remembered. At the time, I dismissed it as my mother's typical guilt-tripping. Now, with the coordinated push for my attendance at this party, I felt a flicker of unease. "Be careful," Olivia warned. "Set your boundaries before you go." Despite my misgivings, I went shopping for Tyler's gift on Friday after work. I selected an expensive watch, not because he deserved it, but because choosing a less expensive gift would inevitably lead to comments about my stinginess despite my big tech salary. The mental gymnastics required to navigate family interactions was exhausting. Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth. I chose my outfit carefully, professional but not flashy, a navy blue dress that wouldn't stand out. The last thing I wanted was to be accused of showing off. I wrapped Tyler's gift in silver paper, added a generic card with a simple, "Happy Birthday," and set off for the 30-minute drive to my parents' suburban neighborhood. Maple Creek Estates hadn't changed much since my childhood. The same well-maintained lawns, the same 2-story houses with 2-car garages, the same sense of comfortable conformity. My parents' colonial-style home at 247 Oakwood Drive stood much as it always had, though the paint was chipping in places and the landscaping had seen better days, subtle signs of their financial strain. The cars lined both sides of the street. Tyler had always been popular, the kind of person who collected friends easily with his outgoing nature. I parked my Audi, another source of family commentary, a block away, and walked slowly toward the house, gift in hand, stomach already nodding with anxiety. Music and laughter spilled from the open windows as I approached. I paused at the front door, took a deep breath, and rang the doorbell instead of using my old key. I was a visitor now, not a resident. Mom answered, her face lighting up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hazel, you made it." She pulled me into a hug that felt performative. "Everyone's out back. Tyler will be so happy to see you." As I stepped into the foyer, the familiar sense of my childhood home, Mom's floral perfume, Dad's pipe tobacco, the lemon furniture polish, hit me with unexpected nostalgia. For a brief moment, I wanted to believe this could be a normal family celebration. Dad appeared from the kitchen, drink in hand. There she is. The busy executive finally found time for family. His tone was jovial, but the barb was clear. I forced a smile. Wouldn't miss Tyler's big day. As I moved toward the backyard, I overheard my parents' hushed conversation. She came. Good, Dad murmured. We'll discuss the arrangement after the cape. Are you sure about the timing? Mom whispered back. What if she makes a scene? She won't, Dad replied with certainty. Not with everyone here. Image is too important to her. I pretended not to hear, but my unease deepened. Whatever this arrangement was, I already knew I wouldn't like it. The backyard had been transformed with string lights, tables covered in blue tablecloths, and dozens of helium balloons. About 100 people milled around. Extended family, childhood neighbors, Tyler's friends from various phases of his life. A bartender served drinks from a rented bar setup, and catering staff circulated with appetizers. I placed Tyler's gift on the designated table, which was already piled high with presents, and grabbed a glass of wine from a passing server. Liquid courage seemed necessary for whatever was coming. Hazel, is that you? My Aunt Patricia approached, eyeing me up and down. Still single? You know, my friend's son just moved to the city. He's a lawyer. And so it began, the familiar litany of uncomfortable interactions. That condo of yours must be worth a fortune now, commented my father's friend George. Smart investment. Your parents are so proud of Tyler, my mother's cousin Ellen informed me, as though I needed reminding of my second-place status. Such a family man, despite his challenges. With each conversation, the knot in my stomach tightened. I checked my watch repeatedly, calculating how soon I could reasonably leave. Then Tyler made his entrance, Vanessa and the kids flanking him like royal attendants. The crowd erupted in cheers and applause. My brother, now sporting a designer haircut and expensive clothes that belied his financial situation, beamed and waved like a politician. When he spotted me, he made a beeline in my direction, enveloping me in a bear hug that smelled of too much cologne. You came, he exclaimed loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. My successful sister made time for little old me. I returned the hug stiffly. Happy birthday, Tyler. He kept his arm around my shoulders as he addressed the people nearby. My sister, the tech genius. Making the big bucks while the rest of us struggle along. His laugh was hollow. Maybe some of that success will rub off on me tonight, huh? The comment hung in the air, loaded with implication. I extracted myself from his grip and moved toward the food table, needing distance. The next 2 hours passed in a blur of small talk and deflected questions about my personal life. I was midway through a conversation with my second cousin when Mom tapped my shoulder. Hazel, could you join us in your father's study? Family meeting. The moment had arrived. Whatever this arrangement was, I was about to find out. Dad's study had always been off-limits when we were kids, a sanctuary of leather, wood, and the musty smell of old books that were more for show than reading. As I followed Mom down the hallway, away from the noise of the party, I noticed Tyler and Dad already waiting by the study door, their expressions unnaturally composed. Close the door, will you? Dad said as we entered. He settled behind his desk while Mom and Tyler took seats on the leather sofa. The only place left for me was the uncomfortable wooden chair near the bookshelf, a physical manifestation of my outsider status in this family unit. Hazel, Dad began, folding his hands on the desk in what I recognized as his business negotiation pose. We wanted to discuss something important with you as a family. Tyler leaned forward, his birthday boy smile replaced by an earnest expression I didn't trust for a second. Sis, you know things have been tough for us lately. The business climate has been challenging, Dad interjected, as though his poor financial decisions were somehow the economy's fault. And, with Tyler's app development costs. We've been thinking about solutions, Mom added, her voice taking on the soothing tone she used when she wanted something. About how this family can support each other. I remained silent, waiting for them to get to the point. Dad cleared his throat. We've come up with a plan that makes sense for everyone. Your condo in Brookside Heights, it's just you living there, right? All that space. My stomach dropped. Yes, and, well, Tyler jumped in. Vanessa and I have been looking at schools in that district. They're much better than what we have here. Aiden and Sophia deserve the best education, you know? The commute is killing me, Dad continued. Being closer to the city would help the business. Mom reached for my hand, which I instinctively pulled away. What we're proposing, dear, is that you sign over your condo to Tyler and his family. They need the space with 2 growing children, and you can easily afford to buy another place. The room fell silent as I processed what they were suggesting. Not asking, suggesting, as though my compliance was a foregone conclusion. You want me to give Tyler my $660,000 condo? I finally said, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. The property I spent years saving for? Just hand it over? We're family, Tyler said, as if that explained everything. You make more than enough to get another place. Maybe something smaller, more suitable for a single person. This isn't a request out of the blue, Dad added. We've been talking about this for months. It's the right thing to do. The right thing, I repeated slowly. And what do I get in this arrangement? They exchanged glances, clearly not expecting this question. The satisfaction of helping your family? Mom offered weakly. I stood up, steadying myself against the bookshelf.
No.
Absolutely not. That condo is mine. I worked for it. I paid for it. I'm not giving it away, not to Tyler, not to anyone. Tyler's face darkened. Always the selfish one, aren't you, Hazel? Some things never change. Selfish. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How am I selfish for not wanting to give away my home? Because family takes care of family. Dad's voice rose. Your brother has children to think about. What do you have? A career? A fancy apartment? What good is success if you don't share it? I've shared plenty, I countered, thinking of the checks I'd written when Tyler's car needed repairs, the expensive birthday gifts for my niece and nephew, the loans to my parents that were never repaid. But my home is not on the table. Mom's expression hardened. After everything we've done for you. A bitter laugh escaped me. What exactly have you done for me? I put myself through college. I built my career without any help. I saved for that down payment while you were bailing out Tyler's failed businesses. There it is, Tyler sneered. Little Miss Perfect thinks she did it all on her own. Newsflash, Hazel, you had advantages I never had. Like what? I demanded. Like your brain. School was always easy for you. Some of us had to work twice as hard. Work. I was incredulous now. When have you ever worked hard at anything, Tyler? Every opportunity was handed to you on a silver platter while I scrounged for crumbs. Dad slammed his hand on the desk. That's enough. This isn't about the past. This is about what's best for the family now. And what's best is for me to give up my home. I moved toward the door. This conversation is over. I'm not signing over my condo. Not today, not ever. Tyler jumped up, blocking my path. You can't just walk away from this. We've already talked to a realtor about listing your place. That stopped me cold. You did what? We thought once we explained, you'd understand, Mom said. Tyler's already enrolled the kids in a new school district for fall. The audacity was breathtaking. They had planned this whole thing without me, assuming I would simply comply with their demands. Move, Tyler, I said quietly. I'm leaving. Running away again, he taunted. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? When things get tough, Hazel disappears. I'm not running. I'm refusing to participate in your delusion that my property is somehow yours to distribute. I pushed past him, heading back toward the party. I needed to get my purse and keys, then get out of this house. Don't you walk away from me, Tyler shouted, following me down the hallway. We're not finished. Guests turned to stare as we emerged into the main party area, Tyler's voice carrying over the music. 34 years old, and still only thinking about yourself. He continued, apparently unconcerned about making a scene at his own birthday party. I spotted my purse on a side table and made my way toward it, ignoring the curious looks from the other guests. Mom grabbed my arm. Hazel, please.
Just think about it.
We can discuss details later. I pulled free from her grasp. There's nothing to discuss. The answer is no. After everything this family has given you, Dad said loudly, this is how you repay us? The irony was so rich I almost laughed. Given me? What exactly have you given me that wasn't given tenfold to Tyler? Don't bring me into your victim complex, Tyler spat. Just because you're jealous of my normal life instead of your lonely existence. By now, the party had gone quiet. 100 pairs of eyes watched our family drama unfold like some terrible reality show. I'm leaving, I announced, grabbing my purse. Happy birthday, Tyler. Enjoy the watch. As I turned toward the door, Tyler's face contorted with rage. You think you're better than us, don't you? With your fancy job and your fancy condo. I didn't respond, which only seemed to infuriate him more. Answer me, he demanded, grabbing a champagne bottle from a nearby ice bucket. You think you're too good for this family? Tyler, Vanessa cautioned, suddenly appearing at his side. Not here. But he was beyond reasoning. As I reached for the front door handle, I heard the collective gasp before I felt the impact, the sickening crack of glass against my skull, the immediate warm flow of blood, the stunned silence followed by screams. The champagne bottle shattered on impact, sending glass and alcohol mixing with my blood. The pain was immediate and blinding. I stumbled forward, my vision blurring as I somehow managed to open the door and stagger outside. Oh my God. Someone caught me as my knees buckled. Someone call an ambulance. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the horrified faces of party guests streaming onto the front lawn and Tyler standing in the doorway, the broken bottle neck still clutched in his hand, his expression a mixture of shock and something else, something that looked disturbingly like satisfaction. The world came back into focus in fragments, the wail of approaching sirens, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, unfamiliar hands pressing something against my head. I was lying on the front lawn of my parents' house, a growing crowd of party guests forming a circle around me. Their faces swam in and out of focus as I fought to stay conscious. Stay with me, Hazel. The voice belonged to Charlotte Peterson, our parents' neighbor and an ER nurse. Her hands were steady as she applied pressure to my wound. The ambulance is almost here. Try not to move. I tried to speak, but the words came out slurred. My head throbbed with each heartbeat, pain radiating from the point of impact. He hit me. I managed. Tyler hit me with a bottle. I know, honey. Everyone saw. Charlotte's voice was gentle, but her expression was grim. The police are on their way too. From the corner of my eye, I could see my parents on the porch, their faces pale. Dad had his arm around Mom, who was sobbing into her hands. Tyler was nowhere to be seen. The ambulance arrived with flashing lights and urgent efficiency. The paramedics worked quickly, asking questions I struggled to answer through the fog of pain. Name? Hazel Mitchell.
Age?
34. Do you know what happened to you? My brother hit me with a champagne bottle. Do you know what day it is? I had to think about that one.
Saturday.
Tyler's birthday.
Good.
We're going to move you onto the stretcher now. As they lifted me, I caught sight of police cars pulling up to the house. 2 officers approached, notebooks already in hand. I'm coming with you, Charlotte announced, climbing into the ambulance beside me. You shouldn't be alone. The ride to Mercy General Hospital passed in a blur of sirens and jostling movement. In the emergency room, doctors confirmed what Charlotte had already suspected, a concussion and a laceration requiring stitches. The CT scan showed no skull fracture, which they assured me was good news, though it didn't feel like it as a doctor numbed my scalp and began the meticulous work of closing the wound. 15 stitches, he announced when he finished. You're lucky. An inch lower, and we might be having a very different conversation. Lucky wasn't exactly how I felt, sitting in a hospital gown with blood matting my hair and a pounding headache that pain medication barely touched. Charlotte had stayed the entire time, only stepping out during the actual medical procedures. Your friend Olivia is on her way, she informed me. I found her number in your phone. I hope that's okay. I nodded gratefully, wincing at the movement. The police officers arrived as the doctor was giving me final instructions about concussion monitoring. They introduced themselves as Officers Bennett and Rodriguez, their expressions professional but sympathetic. MS. Mitchell, we'd like to ask you some questions about what happened tonight, if you're feeling up to it, Officer Bennett said. I recounted everything, the family meeting, the demand for my condo, the argument that spilled into the party, and finally, Tyler's attack with the bottle. There were at least 100 witnesses, I concluded. Everyone at the party saw him hit me. Officer Rodriguez nodded. We've already taken statements from several guests. Your brother is in custody. I want to press charges, I said firmly. Assault and battery at minimum. We'll need you to come to the station to make a formal statement once you're released from the hospital, Officer Bennett explained. But yes, based on witness accounts, your brother is facing serious charges. What about my parents? I asked. They were part of the confrontation too. The officers exchanged glances. Did they physically assault you as well? My mother grabbed my arm to prevent me from leaving. And they were part of the plan to try to take my condo. Officer Rodriguez made notes. We'll include that in the report. Depending on the specifics, there could be additional charges. Olivia arrived as the officers were finishing up, her face tight with worry. Hazel. Oh my God. She rushed to my side, carefully avoiding the four and monitors. Charlotte called me. I can't believe this happened. The officers gave Olivia their cards before leaving. We'll be in touch, Ms. Mitchell. Try to rest, and call us when you're ready to come in. After they left, Olivia turned to me, her eyes bright with anger. Your brother did this? Over the condo discussion. They didn't just discuss it. I told her, the reality of the situation finally sinking in. They had already talked to a realtor. They enrolled the kids in schools near my place. They assumed I would just hand over the keys. That's insane, Olivia said. Completely delusional. Charlotte, who had been quietly arranging my discharge papers, joined the conversation. I've known your family for years, Hazel, but I never imagined Tyler capable of this kind of violence. Neither did I admitted. But looking back, the signs were there. The entitlement, the resentment, the constant comparisons. The doctor returned with discharge instructions and prescriptions. You'll need someone to stay with you for at least 48 hours to monitor for concussion symptoms, he explained. No driving, no screens, no strenuous activity. She's staying with me, Olivia declared. My guest room is all yours, Hazel. And I'll check in on you tomorrow, Charlotte added. Professional courtesy. As Olivia helped me change back into my clothes, now stained with dried blood, I felt a strange sense of clarity despite the throbbing in my head. For years, I had accepted my family's behavior, making excuses, keeping the peace. It took a bottle to the head to finally see the truth. I need to talk to a lawyer, I said as Olivia wheeled me toward the exit. Not just about the assault. About everything. My cousin Rebecca is an attorney, Olivia offered. Family law, primarily, but she'll know who to connect you with. Outside, the night air felt cool against my skin. As Olivia helped me into her car, I looked back at the hospital entrance, illuminated by harsh fluorescent light. I'm done, I said quietly. Done making excuses for them. Done accepting scraps of affection. Done being the family ATM. Olivia squeezed my hand. It's about time. In that moment, with my head bandaged and my heart hardened, I made a decision. This wasn't just about the assault. This was about 34 years of systematic emotional abuse, favoritism, and entitlement. And for once in my life, I was going to fight back. The following days passed in a haze of pain medication, interrupted sleep, and slowly dawning realizations. Olivia's guest room became my sanctuary as I recovered from both the physical trauma and the emotional aftermath of Tyler's attack. True to her word, she stayed with me, monitoring my concussion symptoms and fielding the barrage of calls and texts that started arriving from family members. Your mother called again. Olivia reported on the third morning, bringing me tea and toast. That's the 5th time since yesterday. What did she say? I asked, carefully sitting up in bed. The room no longer spun when I moved, which I considered progress. The same as before. that Tyler is devastated about what happened, that he wasn't himself, that they want to work things out as a family. Olivia's tone made it clear what she thought of these platitudes. And my father? No direct calls from him, but your mom mentioned he's heartbroken about the misunderstanding. I laughed humorlessly. Misunderstanding. That's one way to describe a premeditated attempt to steal my home followed by assault with a deadly weapon. My phone chimed with another text. Olivia checked it for me, following doctor's orders to limit my screen time. It's your Aunt Patricia, she reported. She says, and I quote, family should forgive family. Tyler made a mistake, but he's suffering too. Block her, I said wearily. Block all of them for now. Later that afternoon, Olivia's cousin Rebecca Wilson arrived, briefcase in hand and determination in her stride. At 42, Rebecca had the polished confidence of someone used to winning arguments for a living. Assault and battery is just the beginning, she declared after I'd recounted the entire story. There's attempted coercion, harassment, potentially even conspiracy, depending on how long they've been planning this. What do you recommend? I asked. First, a restraining order against Tyler, minimum. Possibly against your parents too, if they continue the harassment. Second, we pursue maximum criminal charges for the assault. Third, we look into civil damages. Rebecca tapped her pen against her legal pad. But there's something else I want to check. You mentioned your parents' house. Do you know whose names are on the deed? The question caught me off guard. My parents, I assume. Why? Rebecca's expression turned thoughtful. Just covering all bases. Can I ask you to sign some forms allowing me to do some preliminary research? After Rebecca left, promising to return with more information soon, Charlotte stopped by to check my wound and change the dressing. The stitches are looking good, she assured me. No signs of infection. How's the pain? Manageable, I replied. The headaches are less frequent. Charlotte hesitated before speaking again. Hazel, there's something you should know. I didn't want to add to your stress earlier, but given that you're pursuing legal action. She took a deep breath. The night of the party, after you were taken to the hospital, I overheard Tyler and your parents talking. They were arguing about what happened, but not in the way you might expect. What do you mean? Your father was angry at Tyler, but not for hurting you. He was angry because Tyler screwed up the plan by being too aggressive. Your mother kept saying they needed to regroup and try another approach. It sounded like the assault wasn't the plan, but getting your condo definitely was. The information settled heavily in my chest. Thank you for telling me. That actually helps my case. 2 days later, Rebecca returned with a thick folder and a surprisingly satisfied expression. I have some very interesting information, she announced, spreading documents on Olivia's dining table. First, about your parents' house. I pulled the property records, and guess whose name is on the deed alongside Kenneth and Gloria Mitchell? My stomach dropped.
No. Yes.
Yours. Do you remember signing paperwork about 5 years ago? A vague memory surfaced. Dad calling me about refinancing the house, needing my signature on some forms because the bank required additional security. I had signed without reading carefully, trusting my parents when they said it was just a formality. They added me to the deed because they couldn't qualify for refinancing on their own. I realized. My credit score and income were what got them approved. Rebecca nodded. Exactly. Which means you're not just a co-signer on the loan, you're a legal co-owner of the property. 1/3 ownership, to be precise. The implications began to dawn on me. So, if they've taken out additional loans against the house, they would have needed your signature, legally speaking. If they forged that or proceeded without your knowledge, that's fraud. Rebecca pulled out another document. Which brings me to my second discovery. I had my paralegal do some digging into recent financial activities connected to your parents and brother. Look at this. She handed me a printout of what appeared to be a business registration. Mitchell Innovation Labs, LLC? I read aloud. Registered to, wait, this is my address. My condo address. Filed 3 months ago, Rebecca confirmed. With Tyler Mitchell listed as CEO and your parents as board members. They registered a business at your address without your knowledge or permission. My hands shook as I processed this information. They were planning to take my condo for months. The birthday party confrontation wasn't spontaneous. It was the culmination of a long-term strategy. Rebecca nodded grimly. It gets worse. We pulled Tyler's credit report as part of the case preparation. He's been telling creditors he lives at your address. There are utilities, credit cards, even a car loan using your condo as his residence. The betrayal cut deep, but with it came a strange sense of validation. I hadn't imagined their entitlement. It was real, documented, and apparently limitless. What does all this mean for my case? I asked. It means we have a lot more leverage than I initially thought, Rebecca explained. The assault is serious enough, but this pattern of financial deception adds significant weight. And as for the house, she tapped the deed document. As a co-owner, you have rights, including the right to force a sale if the other owners are engaging in fraud or misconduct. The room fell silent as I considered the implications. You're saying I could sell their house? The one they've lived in for 30 years. Legally, yes. It would require court approval, but given the circumstances, their attempt to take your property, followed by assault when you refused, plus the financial fraud, we have a strong case. It seemed almost too perfect, a karmic reversal I hadn't dared imagine. I need to think about this. Of course, Rebecca agreed. It's a significant step, but I wanted you to know all your options. As Rebecca packed up her documents, my phone rang. Despite the blocking, some calls were still getting through, this one from an unknown number. Should I answer it? Olivia asked. Put it on speaker, I decided. The voice that came through was my father's, his tone uncharacteristically subdued. Hazel, are you there? We need to talk about what happened. I have nothing to say to you, I replied coldly. My attorney will handle all communication from now on. Attorney? Hazel, this is family business. We don't need lawyers involved. Family business stopped being an option when Tyler smashed a bottle against my head. There was a pause before he continued. That was unfortunate. Tyler lost his temper. But he's getting help now, anger management classes. He's truly sorry. Is that why he's been using my address for his business and personal finances for months? Because he's sorry. Another pause, longer this time. How did you know about that? I know everything, Dad. About Mitchell Innovation Labs. About the loans. About all of it. Now, Hazel, those were just preliminary steps. We were going to bring you in as a partner eventually. It was going to be a family business. The audacity was breathtaking. Stop lying. You've been planning to take my condo for months. You just didn't expect me to say no. We're your family, he insisted, his voice hardening. Everything we've done has been for this family. Your success should benefit all of us. My success. I felt my own anger rising. My success that you had no part in? That you actively undermined at every opportunity? That's success. Don't be dramatic. We supported you.
When?
When you refused to help with college. When you criticized my career choices. When you borrowed money you never repaid. When, exactly, did you support me? This conversation isn't productive, he snapped. We'll talk when you're being more reasonable. No, we won't. Any further communication goes through my attorney. And Dad, you might want to get a lawyer yourself. You're going to need one. I ended the call, my heart pounding but my resolve strengthening. Rebecca gave me an approving nod. You handled that perfectly, she said. And it's more evidence of their continuing harassment and manipulation. As she left, promising to file the restraining order paperwork immediately, I turned to Olivia. I think I've made my decision about the house. Are you sure? She asked. It's a big step. I nodded, the last pieces of my lifelong need for family approval finally falling away. They were willing to take everything from me without a second thought. It's time they learned that actions have consequences. The depth of my family's financial deception became clearer in the days that followed. Rebecca connected me with Marcus Johnson, a forensic accountant specializing in cases involving family financial fraud. What he uncovered left even Rebecca, who thought she'd seen everything in her years of practice, visibly shocked. They've been planning this for well over a year, Marcus explained, spreading spreadsheets across Olivia's dining table, which had become our unofficial command center. The first traces appear 14 months ago, when your parents refinanced their mortgage again, using your credit but forging your signature on the documents. I never authorized that, I confirmed, examining the signature that was a poor imitation of my own. Then, approximately 12 months ago, they created a shell company, Mitchell Family Holdings, with you listed as a silent partner. Marcus pointed to another document. Again, forged signature. Rebecca made notes. That's 2 counts of forgery, plus fraud. It gets worse, Marcus continued. 9 months ago, they began listing your condo address as the primary residence for both Tyler and your parents on various financial applications. 7 months ago, they registered the business using your address. And 3 months ago, they started the process of enrolling the children in schools in your district. All of this confirms premeditation, Rebecca noted. This wasn't a spontaneous request at a birthday party. This was a calculated, long-term plan to essentially steal your property. I stared at the mountain of evidence, a strange numbness replacing my initial shock. Did they really think they'd get away with this? Marcus adjusted his glasses. Based on the documents, yes. There are emails between your brother and parents discussing how to convince Hazel, or, failing that, how to leverage her guilt about family obligations. They seem to believe you would eventually capitulate to family pressure. And if I didn't? I asked. Marcus and Rebecca exchanged glances. There are some concerning messages about alternative approaches if you proved difficult, Marcus admitted. Nothing explicitly threatening violence, but the implication that they would escalate tactics is clear. The following day, Detective Sophia Carter from the Financial Crimes Unit came to review Marcus's findings. She brought additional evidence gathered during the police investigation of the assault. We obtained a warrant to search your brother's phone and computer based on the assault charges, she explained. What we found corroborates everything your forensic accountant discovered, plus some additional concerning elements. She opened her laptop to show a series of text messages between Tyler and my father from 2 weeks before the party. Tyler, what if she still says no after the party? Dad, she won't. Your mother, and I will make it clear this isn't a request. Tyler, but if she does? Dad, then we move to Plan B. She's on the deed to our house. We have leverage. What did they mean by leverage? I asked. Detective Carter sighed. Based on other messages, they were planning to claim you had verbally agreed to sign over your condo in exchange for removing your name from their house deed. They were essentially going to claim a verbal contract that never existed. Rebecca looked outraged. That would never hold up in court. They probably knew that, Detective Carter agreed. But they were counting on family pressure and your desire to avoid lengthy legal proceedings to force your compliance. I shook my head, still struggling to comprehend the extent of their scheming. They really thought they had it all figured out. People who engage in this kind of familial financial abuse often believe their actions are justified, Detective Carter explained. They convince themselves that family resources should be communal, especially when one member is more successful than others. Our meeting was interrupted by an urgent call from the security desk at my condo building. Ms. Mitchell? This is Carlos from security. There's a situation you should be aware of. A man and woman claiming to be your parents attempted to gain access to your unit. When we refused, they became agitated, claiming they had a right to enter because, and I'm quoting here, the property will soon be transferred to their son. My blood ran cold. Did they leave? Only after we threatened to call the police. But before they left, the man said something about changing the locks being their right as future owners. I thanked Carlos for his vigilance and immediately relayed the information to Detective Carter, who promised to send officers to interview the security staff and review surveillance footage. This is a clear violation of the restraining order, Rebecca noted, and further evidence of their intent to take your property by any means necessary. Later that evening, a neighbor from my condo building sent security footage showing Tyler and my father attempting to pick the lock on my door, carrying what appeared to be new doorknobs and locks. The timestamp showed they had returned after being turned away by security, apparently thinking they could access the building through the parking garage. "This is beyond delusional," Olivia commented as we watched the footage. "They're acting like they already own your place." "In their minds, they do," I replied. "They've convinced themselves they're entitled to it." The next day, Rebecca confirmed what I had been suspecting. As a co-owner of my parents' house, I had the legal right to force its sale, especially given the documented fraud and the ongoing harassment. "The court will almost certainly approve a partition by sale," she explained. "Given the circumstances, including the assault and the multiple instances of fraud, you have a very strong case." "And the proceeds?" I asked. "Would be divided according to ownership percentage, after settling any liens or outstanding mortgages. Your share would be 1/3. I sat with this information, turning it over in my mind. The house that had been the site of so much favoritism and unfairness could become the instrument of justice. There was a certain poetry to it. "If I decide to do this," I said slowly, "how quickly could it happen?" Given the urgency, due to the ongoing harassment and criminal case, we could expedite the process. 3 weeks, maybe less. Rebecca studied my face. "Are you sure this is what you want?" I thought about my childhood in that house, always feeling like a guest in my own home. I thought about the blood still matted in my hair from my brother's assault. I thought about the years of manipulation, the constant expectation that I should give and give while receiving nothing in return. "Yes," I said firmly. "It's time they learned that actions have consequences." The emotional weight of my decision led me to seek therapy. Dr. Elizabeth Foster specialized in family trauma and financial abuse, and our sessions became a crucial outlet as I navigated the legal proceedings. "What you're experiencing is a profound betrayal," Dr. Foster explained during our second session. "Not just the assault, but the years of conditional love and exploitation." "I keep asking myself if I'm doing the right thing," I admitted. "Selling their house seems so harsh." "Let me ask you this," Dr. Foster replied. "If a stranger had assaulted you and tried to steal your property, would you hesitate to seek justice?" "No, of course not. The fact that they're family doesn't lessen the crime. If anything, it makes the betrayal worse." She leaned forward. "Hazel, setting boundaries isn't punishment. It's self-protection." A week into the legal proceedings, I received a letter from my parents' newly hired attorney demanding that I pay for Tyler's emotional distress resulting from his arrest and the damage to his reputation caused by the assault charges. The letter claimed that I had provoked the assault by selfishly refusing to help family in need, and demanded that I drop all charges and proceed with the agreed-upon property transfer. It was the final push I needed. I contacted Rebecca immediately. "Move forward with the house sale. Full speed ahead." Within days, we had listed the property with Samantha Reynolds, a real estate agent who specialized in quick sales. Given the house's location in a desirable suburb, interest was immediate. Within a week, we had multiple offers, the highest coming from developer Benjamin Harris, who planned to demolish the existing structure and build 2 modern homes on the lot. "It's an all-cash offer, $50,000 above asking price, with a 2-week closing timeline," Samantha explained. "They're willing to handle all the eviction proceedings as part of the deal." I shook my head. "No need. I'll handle the eviction personally." The court hearing for the partition sale was scheduled for exactly 3 weeks after Tyler's assault. My parents and their attorney argued vehemently against the sale, claiming family property should be protected from vindictive actions. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, was unimpressed. "The evidence of fraud is substantial," she noted, "and the violent assault, for which the defendant has already been indicted by a grand jury, adds a concerning dimension of danger. The partition sale is approved." As I left the courthouse, legal victory in hand, I made 2 decisions that would surprise my family. First, I instructed Rebecca to establish college funds for Aiden and Sophia with a portion of my proceeds from the house sale. Whatever my feelings about their parents, my niece and nephew were innocent children who deserved educational opportunities. Second, I anonymously donated a significant amount to a local domestic violence shelter, wanting something positive to come from this painful chapter. Are you ready for what comes next? Olivia asked as we drove home from the courthouse. I touched the healing wound on my scalp, a permanent reminder of my family's true nature. More than ready. Exactly 3 weeks and 2 days after Tyler shattered a champagne bottle against my skull, I pulled up to 247 Oakwood Drive for what I knew would be the last time. Behind me was a small convoy, a sheriff's deputy in an official vehicle, Rebecca in her sleek sedan, and a moving truck with 2 burly men waiting for instructions. The morning was bright and clear, a beautiful spring day that seemed at odds with the grim task ahead. I had chosen this particular morning deliberately, Saturday, when I knew my parents' friends and neighbors would be home, potential witnesses to whatever unfolded. Are you sure you want to do this personally? Rebecca asked as we stood on the sidewalk. I could handle it for you. I shook my head.
No.
I need to do this myself. They need to understand that their actions have consequences. The sheriff's deputy, a woman named Officer Martinez with kind eyes and a firm demeanor, reviewed the court order once more. Everything's in order, Ms. Mitchell. I'll accompany you to serve the eviction notice and deed transfer papers. The residents have 48 hours to vacate the premises. I took a deep breath and walked up the familiar path to the front door, flanked by Rebecca and Officer Martinez. The doorbell chimed the same melody it had since my childhood. For a moment, muscle memory almost made me reach for my old house key before I remembered why I was here. The door swung open to reveal my father, Saturday casual in khakis and a polo shirt, his expression shifting from routine annoyance to shock as he registered who stood before him. Hazel? What is this? His eyes darted to Officer Martinez in her uniform, then to Rebecca with her briefcase, and finally to the moving truck idling at the curb. Kenneth Mitchell? Officer Martinez asked formally. I'm here to serve you with an eviction notice and property transfer documents. By order of the county court, this property has been sold in a partition action. Sold? My father's face drained of color. That's impossible. This is our home. It was your home. I corrected him. Until you decided to forge my signature on refinancing documents, commit multiple counts of fraud using my name, and then assault me when I wouldn't give you my condo. Gloria, he shouted over his shoulder. Get out here now. My mother appeared in the hallway, still in her bathrobe despite the late morning hour. Her eyes widened when she saw me. Hazel, what's happening? She's saying the house has been sold. My father spat. Some nonsense about court orders. Officer Martinez held out the official documents. Ma'am, sir, these papers explain everything. As a co-owner of this property, Ms. Mitchell had the legal right to petition for a partition sale, which the court granted based on evidence of fraud and criminal activity. My mother's hand flew to her throat. This can't be legal. We've lived here for 30 years. It's perfectly legal, Rebecca interjected. The documentation is all here. The new owner takes possession immediately, though you have 48 hours to remove your personal belongings. Movement behind my parents caught my eye. Tyler appeared, apparently having been staying with them since his release on bail. His face contorted with rage when he saw me. You, he snarled, lunging forward only to be blocked by my father. Not now, Tyler, my father hissed. There's a cop right there. Officer Martinez's hand moved instinctively to her weapon. Sir, I need you to step back. You're currently in violation of a restraining order by being in Ms. Mitchell's presence. This is my parents' house. Tyler protested. Not anymore, I said calmly. And technically, it was always partially mine, a fact you all exploited when it benefited you and conveniently forgot when it didn't. By now, neighbors had begun to notice the commotion. Charlotte stood on her front lawn, arms crossed, watching the scene unfold. Other familiar faces appeared in windows and doorways, curiosity drawing them to witness my family's public downfall. You can't do this to us, my mother pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Where will we go? You should have thought about that before you tried to steal my condo, I replied, surprised by my own steadiness. Before you forged my signature on legal documents. Before Tyler decided that violence was an acceptable response to hearing no for once in his life. Officer Martinez handed the paperwork to my father, who took it with trembling hands. You have 48 hours to vacate. The movers here can help with your belongings if you wish. This is what you want? My father asked me, his voice hollow. To make your family homeless? No, I corrected him. This is what you created when you decided that my property was yours to take, that my boundaries didn't matter, that my success was something you were entitled to simply because we share DNA. Tyler, unable to contain himself any longer, spat at my feet. Always the victim, aren't you, Hazel? Poor little girl who had to work for things instead of having them handed to her. Officer Martinez stepped between us. Sir, one more outburst, and I'll arrest you for violating the restraining order. Go ahead, he challenged. Add it to the list. My life is already ruined thanks to her. Your life is the result of your own choices, I replied. Just as mine is. As if on cue, more vehicles pulled up to the house. Tyler's wife Vanessa with the children, apparently arriving for a weekend visit, and several of my parents' friends who must have been alerted to the situation by frantic phone calls or texts. Vanessa's face paled as she took in the scene. The moving truck, the sheriff's deputy, the legal papers in my father's hand. What's happening? Your sister-in-law has sold our house out from under us, my father announced loudly for the benefit of the growing audience. She's throwing her own parents onto the street. I turned to address not just my family, but the assembled neighbors and friends. What he's not telling you is that they forged my signature on legal documents, registered businesses using my address without permission, and tried to coerce me into giving them my condo. When I refused, Tyler assaulted me with a champagne bottle in front of 100 witnesses, sending me to the hospital with a concussion and 15 stitches. A murmur ran through the crowd. Many of them had been at the party, had seen the assault with their own eyes, but hadn't known the full context. That's not how it happened, Tyler protested weakly. There are court records, Rebecca added. Financial documents. Police reports. Witness statements. The facts are clear. My mother, seeing that public sympathy was not swinging their way, changed tactics. Hazel, please, she begged. We're still your family. Whatever mistakes we've made, surely we can work this out. I've arranged for a 2-bedroom apartment for you and Dad. I informed her, my final act of familial obligation. It's paid through the end of the year. The address is in the paperwork. It's not what you're used to, but it's clean and safe. My father looked stunned. You're still helping us? After all this? I'm ensuring you're not homeless, I clarified. Not out of obligation, but because I refuse to be the person you tried to make me, someone who puts self-interest above basic human decency. Tyler scoffed. What about us? Where are Vanessa and the kids supposed to go? That's not my responsibility, I said. But if you're asking about your children's future, you should know I've established college funds for both of them with part of my proceeds from this sale. Unlike some people, I don't punish children for their parents' mistakes. Vanessa's expression softened slightly at this news, though Tyler looked more outraged than grateful. You have 48 hours, I repeated, turning to leave. I suggest you start packing. As I walked back toward my car, my father called after me. Is this really how you want to end things? 34 years of family, just over? I paused and turned back one last time. This family ended the moment Tyler decided violence was an acceptable response to not getting his way. This family ended when you and Mom decided my property was yours to take. This family ended when all of you confused love with ownership. I got into my car and drove away, watching the house recede in my rearview mirror. The weight that had pressed on my chest for weeks, for years, really began to lift. For the first time since the assault, I took a full, deep breath. 6 months later, I stood in front of a classroom of young women at the Women's Financial Empowerment Center, where I volunteered teaching a course on financial independence. My scar had faded to a thin white line partially hidden by my hair, but the lessons from that painful chapter remained vivid. Boundaries aren't just emotional, I explained to the attentive faces before me. They're financial too. No one, not a partner, not a friend, not even family, has the right to your resources without your consent. After class, I met Olivia and our new friend Diana for dinner. Diana was a graphic designer I'd met through the center, and over the past few months, she'd become an important part of my rebuilt social circle. How did it go today? Olivia asked as we settled into our table. Really well, I replied. It's healing, honestly, turning that experience into something that might help others. Have you heard anything from them? Diana asked carefully, aware of my family history. My parents send occasional emails. Formal, distant. They're managing in the apartment, though Dad had to come out of retirement to cover expenses. Tyler's case is still moving through the courts. His lawyer keeps trying to delay. And how are you feeling about all of it? Olivia asked. I considered the question, something Dr. Foster asked me regularly in our continuing therapy sessions. I still have moments of doubt, moments where I wonder if I did the right thing. But then I remember that I didn't create this situation. I just refused to be its victim. Diana raised her glass. To boundaries, consequences, and new beginnings. As we clinked glasses, I felt the last pieces of guilt finally release their hold. Families should be about mutual support, not exploitation. Love should lift you up, not tear you down. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from those who should have protected us most. But from those lessons can come strength, clarity, and ultimately, freedom. I had lost the family I was born into, but in its place, I was building something far more valuable, relationships based on respect, boundaries, and genuine care. My story wasn't over. It was just beginning on my own terms. What about you? Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members or cut ties with toxic relatives? Share your experiences in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video if you found my story helpful, subscribe for more content about family dynamics and personal growth, and share with anyone who might be struggling with similar situations. Remember, sometimes the healthiest family is the one you create for yourself. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey to healthy relationships.
I'm Olivia Parker, 34 years old, and until last month, my family thought I was the disappointing underachiever despite being the CEO of a billion-dollar tech company. At our annual family BBQ, my mother laughed, "She's just a secretary. Ignore her," while my perfect sister Jessica bragged about her corporate promotion. Nobody knew that in 3 minutes, her boss would walk in, spot me across the lawn, and change everything with 9 words. "Madam CEO, I didn't expect you here." Before I tell you how my entire family's perception changed in an instant, drop a comment letting me know if your family has ever underestimated you, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about unexpected life turns. Growing up as the middle child between my older sister Jessica and younger brother Michael was an exercise in disappearing. From the beginning, our family operated with an unspoken hierarchy. Jessica was the golden child with perfect grades and conventional ambitions. Michael was the charming baby boy who could do no wrong, and I was, well, the odd one out. Our parents, Eleanor and Richard Parker, built their identities around their children's achievements. Mom was a former beauty pageant contestant turned real estate agent who never quite reached the success she dreamed of, while Dad was a banking executive who measured worth in promotions and salary figures. They created a household where dinner conversations revolved around accomplishments, with subtle and not-so-subtle comparisons between siblings. "Jessica got straight A's again," Mom would announce, displaying my sister's report card like a trophy. "And she's been elected student council president." Then she'd glance at my B+ average with a slight grimace. "Olivia's doing fine, I suppose." Jessica thrived under this pressure, checking every box on my parents' success checklist. She chose economics as her major because Dad suggested it, joined the right sorority because Mom insisted, and dated boys from good families with promising futures. Meanwhile, my fascination with computer programming and digital innovation was dismissed as a hobby. "Computers are for playing games," Dad said when I asked for my first coding course at 14. "Focus on something that will get you into a proper university." I still remember the career day in 11th grade when I excitedly shared my vision for a tech startup that would create affordable software for community organizations. "That's sweet, honey." Mom patted my hand. But maybe aim for something more realistic, like Jessica's internship at Morgan Financial Group. What they couldn't understand was that I wasn't rejecting success. I was redefining it. While Jessica networked at corporate cocktail parties, I spent evenings building websites for local businesses and learning everything I could about emerging technologies. By senior year of college, the pattern was firmly established. Jessica graduated summa cum laude from Princeton with job offers from 3 prestigious firms. My graduation from a smaller tech-focused university was barely acknowledged, despite finishing at the top of my class. At least she finished. Dad whispered to Mom at my ceremony, loud enough for me to hear. That summer, I launched my first real company with 2 classmates in a tiny rented office space. We developed a customer relationship management platform specifically designed for nonprofit organizations. When I tried to explain it at a family dinner, my father checked his watch 3 times before changing the subject to Jessica's new condo. Real estate is a smart investment, he said pointedly. Much better than throwing money away on, what did you call it? A startup? The irony was that my little project secured its first major client that same week. But after years of dismissal, I'd learned to keep my successes private. There was a certain freedom in being underestimated. No pressure, no expectations, just the quiet satisfaction of proving them wrong without them even knowing. As my company grew, so did the gap between my family's perception and reality. By 28, I was leading a team of 30 employees and closing multi-million-dollar deals. By 30, we'd expanded internationally with offices in 3 countries. By 32, I was featured in Forbes's Entrepreneurs to Watch list, though I used only my first initial instead of my full name to maintain my privacy. O. Parker was becoming a respected name in tech circles, while Olivia Parker remained Jessica's underachieving sister at family gatherings. My company, Acumen Solutions, specialized in developing integrated software platforms that helped underprivileged communities access essential services. Our biggest innovation was creating scalable, affordable technology that could be implemented by resource-strapped organizations. The work was meaningful, challenging, and exactly what I'd always wanted to do. I deliberately maintained a low public profile, partly because I believed effective leadership didn't require constant spotlight, and partly because I'd grown comfortable with my family's misconceptions. There was something strangely satisfying about succeeding so thoroughly on my own terms, without their validation or interference. Last year, when Acumen Solutions was valued at over $2 billion and acquired our 4th competitor, Jessica called to tell me about her promotion to senior investment manager. "You should really think about getting a stable job like mine," she said after 20 minutes of detailing her new title. "Mom and Dad are worried about your future." I looked around my corner office with its view of downtown Seattle and replied, "I'm doing okay, Jess, but thanks for your concern." She didn't hear the amusement in my voice, just as my parents never noticed that my modest lifestyle choices were exactly that. Choices. My supposedly cheap apartment was a carefully renovated industrial loft in the city's most exclusive district. My practical car was a limited edition electric vehicle with a 6-month waiting list. And my casual clothes were actually designer. Pieces selected for comfort rather than labels. I had nothing to prove, at least not to myself. But as another family gathering approached, I sometimes wondered what it would take for them to finally see me clearly. The annual Parker family BBQ was a tradition dating back to my childhood. What once began as a simple gathering had evolved into an elaborate display of status and achievement, particularly after most of the cousins reached adulthood. This year, as I drove through my parents' upscale neighborhood with a rare bottle of wine on the passenger seat, I wondered why I still subjected myself to this ritual of subtle humiliation. Their sprawling suburban home looked picture-perfect as always. Manicured lawn, Martha Stewart-worthy decorations, and the faint sound of carefully selected background music. Mom had once mentioned they hired a party planner for these casual family events. Image was everything. I smoothed down my simple white linen shirt and adjusted my sunglasses. Though I could easily afford designer labels that would impress even my status-conscious relatives, I'd deliberately chosen understated quality. My watch alone cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, but it didn't scream wealth. That wasn't my style. "Olivia, you made it," my mother called from the patio, her voice carrying that familiar note of surprise, as if she'd half expected me to cancel. She air-kissed near my cheeks, careful not to smudge her makeup. "Jessica and Kenneth just arrived. They brought the most gorgeous seafood platter from that new gourmet market." I handed her the wine. "Chateau Margaux 2010. I thought Dad might enjoy it." She glanced at the label without recognition. "How thoughtful. I'll add it to the bar." The bottle worth nearly $2,000 disappeared into her kitchen without further comment. The backyard was already filled with relatives showcasing their versions of success. Uncle Peter showing off his new Rolex to anyone who'd look. Cousin Rachel describing her family's recent European vacation. And there was Jessica, holding court near the pool, dressed in a clearly expensive designer sundress, her diamond engagement ring catching the sunlight as she gestured. "And then the senior partner specifically requested me for the Morgan acquisition team," she was saying to our impressed-looking aunts. "It's basically an acknowledgement that I'm on the partner track." "There's my girl." Dad appeared, gin and tonic in hand, clapping me on the shoulder. "Still at that little startup?" "Still there," I confirmed with a small smile. "Well, persistence is admirable. But you know, Jessica's firm is always hiring. With your sister's recommendation, I bet they'd find something for you." He lowered his voice. "Benefits package is excellent. Health insurance, retirement plan. Things to think about at your age." I resisted explaining that I provided my employees with healthcare coverage that exceeded anything offered by Morgan Financial Group, or that our retirement matching program was among the most generous in the industry. "I'll keep that in mind," I said instead. "Olivia," my cousin Tyler approached. "What is it that you do again? Something with computers?" "Software development and integration solutions," I replied. His eyes glazed over immediately. Cool. Say, did you see Jessica's new car? 60,000 straight cash? No financing?" He wandered off before I could respond. As more family arrived, I gravitated toward the food preparation area. Mom had hired caterers, but I found comfort in arranging platters and filling ice buckets. It gave me something to do besides explaining my vague tech job to uninterested relatives. "Need any help?" It was Kenneth, Jessica's husband of 3 years. Unlike my sister, Kenneth had always treated me with genuine respect. As a pediatric surgeon, he measured success differently than my parents did. "Just hiding out for a bit," I admitted. He smiled understandingly. "Jessica's in rare form today, nervous about her boss stopping by later. Apparently he wants to briefly meet the family since they'll be working closely together." "William Reynolds?" I asked, carefully keeping my expression neutral. "That's him. You know of him?" Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. The caller ID showed my chief operating officer's name. "Sorry, I need to take this." I stepped into a quiet corner of the yard. "Grace, what's up?" "The Morgan acquisition paperwork needs your final signature. Legal made those changes you requested." "All of them?" "Including the retention packages for their middle management team?" "Yes, all approved. The board is unanimously supportive. We can finalize today if you're ready." "Send the documents to my secure email. I'll review and sign within the hour." When I returned, Mom was calling everyone to be seated for lunch. "Olivia, there you are. We're putting you at table 3 with the cousins." The kids' table. At 34, Jessica and Kenneth were seated at the main table with my parents, of course, along with my Aunt Linda and Uncle Robert, both doctors. Meanwhile, I was sandwiched between my 16-year-old cousin Madison and my perpetually unemployed cousin Dennis. Dad stood to make a toast. "I want to thank everyone for coming today to our little tradition. We have much to celebrate this year. Michael's promotion at his law firm." A pause for applause. Linda and Robert's 30th anniversary. More applause. And of course, Jessica's extraordinary achievement as she takes on senior responsibilities. At Morgan Financial Group, managing accounts worth over $100 million. Enthusiastic applause followed as Jessica beamed. And we're all here together, healthy and happy, Dad concluded, with a general wave that presumably included me in the family's blessings. Throughout the meal, conversation at the main table revolved around Jessica's accomplishments, while I answered Madison's questions about what colleges I'd recommend for someone interested in computer science. Aunt Catherine leaned over from the next table. "Olivia, darling, are you seeing anyone? You know, Brenda's son David just moved back to town after his divorce. He's an insurance adjuster. Very stable career." "I'm focusing on work right now," I replied. "At your age, you should be focusing on family," she said with a pointed look. "The biological clock waits for no woman." Mom overheard and chimed in. "Olivia's always been a late bloomer. Remember how she couldn't ride a bike until she was 9? She laughed affectionately, as if discussing a charming quirk rather than publicly infantilizing her adult daughter. Later, as family dispersed around the yard again, I found myself in a conversation with Dad and Uncle Peter about the housing market. "Property values in the tech corridor are skyrocketing," I explained. "If you're looking to invest, I'd suggest focusing on the developing areas just outside the main hubs. They're undervalued now, but will appreciate significantly once the expansion plans are approved." Uncle Peter nodded thoughtfully, then turned to Dad. "Speaking of real estate investments, Richard, have you considered what I mentioned about those commercial properties downtown?" Dad straightened up. "Absolutely. In fact, I was saying to Michael just yesterday that the tech corridor peripheral areas are where the smart money is going. Tremendous growth potential there." I blinked as my father repeated my exact advice word for word without acknowledgement. "Brilliant insight, Richard," Uncle Peter agreed, while everyone nodded appreciatively. I excused myself to step outside and respond to the acquisition documents Grace had sent. As I electronically signed the final page, authorizing a $300 million transaction that would change the shape of both our companies, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony. Inside, my family was still patting themselves on the pee. Back for six-figure achievements and clever dinner party insights. When I returned to the gathering, Jessica had captured everyone's attention with elaborate stories about her corporate adventures. "So there I was, in the boardroom with the executive committee," she was saying, gesturing dramatically with her wine glass. "The London office on one video screen, Tokyo on another, and everyone waiting for my analysis of the Asian markets." Our mother gazed at her with undisguised adoration. "Jessica has always had such presence," she told Aunt Catherine. "Even as a little girl," she commanded attention. I quietly took a seat at the edge of the group, content to observe the family dynamics. Kenneth caught my eye and gave a small smile that seemed to say, "Here we go again." William Reynolds himself said my presentation was exactly what Morgan Financial needs going forward, Jessica continued, emphasizing the CEO's name for maximum impact. "He's stopping by today, you know, just briefly. He says he likes to get to know the families of his key team members." "A CEO who makes house calls," Uncle Robert said, impressed. "That's quite the honor, Jessica." Mom practically vibrated with pride. "We always knew Jessica would go far. From the moment she was accepted to Princeton, we said she was destined for greatness." Dad nodded sagely. "It's about having a clear plan and executing it." Jessica understood that from day one. No distractions, no detours. The unspoken comparison hung in the air between us. Jessica, the daughter with the perfect trajectory. And me, the one who took detours. Kenneth, who had been quiet during Jessica's monologue, suddenly spoke up. "Olivia runs her own company, you know. She's been quite successful, too." A brief, uncomfortable silence followed. "Well, yes," Mom said with a tight smile. "Olivia has her website business. Very entrepreneurial." "Software solutions," I corrected gently. "Is that like IT support?" Cousin Rachel asked. My husband's company just hired someone to fix their computers. Maybe you could send them your resume? Before I could respond, Jessica laughed. Olivia's too independent for corporate life. She likes making her own hours, working in coffee shops. There's value in that lifestyle, too. Speaking of independence, Mom interjected, clearly eager to change the subject. Let's start setting up for dessert. Olivia, would you help me bring out the plates? You're so good with those practical tasks. As we arranged dessert in the kitchen, Mom kept up a steady stream of commentary about Jessica's impending visit from William Reynolds. Should I offer him coffee or something stronger? What impression would that make? Jessica says he's very particular about appearances. I'm sure he's just a normal person, Mom. She looked at me as if I'd suggested aliens had landed. He's the CEO of one of the largest financial institutions in the country, Olivia. There's nothing normal about him. This visit could be crucial for Jessica's career. I bit back the urge to explain that CEOs were, in fact, just people. Instead, I asked, do you need anything else carried out? No, the caterers will handle the rest. You can go back to the young people's table. She patted my arm. Try to mingle a bit more, dear. Networking is important, even in your field. When everyone gathered for dessert, I found myself once again relegated to the peripheral table while Jessica held court at the center. Dad was making another toast, this one specifically celebrating Jessica's exceptional business acumen and the honor of William Reynolds' impending visit. My aunt. Meredith slid into the seat beside me. So, Olivia? Still single? No prospects on the horizon? I'm focusing on building my company right now. She leaned in, voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. You know, dear, there's more to life than work. Your biological clock is ticking. Jessica already has her career and a wonderful husband. Perhaps it's time to shift your priorities? My priorities are exactly where I want them, I replied evenly. Well, she sniffed. Independence is all well and good, but no one wants to end up alone. Even with your limited options, surely there must be someone suitable. The casual cruelty of her words stung more than I wanted to admit. After years of family gatherings like this, I should have been immune. But somehow each dismissal still found its mark. I excused myself again, this time to check on another message, from Grace. We were coordinating the final details of tomorrow's announcement about the Morgan Financial acquisition, a merger that would expand our global reach significantly. Everything looks good, I texted her. Press release approved. Schedule. The announcement for 9 a.m. Eastern. Congratulations, boss, she replied. This is a game changer. As I returned my phone to my pocket, I caught Jessica watching me curiously. Important message? She asked, a hint of condescension in her voice. Just work, I said with a shrug. On a Saturday? That startup life sounds exhausting. At least in my position, I have boundaries. Weekends are sacred. William is very big on work-life balance for the executive team. I suppressed a smile at the irony. William Reynolds had a reputation in the industry for being available day or night, and expecting the same from his senior staff. But I simply nodded. That sounds nice. Dessert progressed with more of the same dynamics. Dad and Uncle Peter discussing investment opportunities without acknowledging my input. Mom highlighting Jessica's accomplishments to anyone in earshot. Cousins alternately ignoring me or offering well-intentioned but condescending advice about real jobs. I found myself questioning, not for the first time, why I continued to attend these gatherings. What was I hoping would change? Did I still, after all these years, crave my parents' approval? Or was I simply punishing myself for not fitting their narrow definition of success? My phone buzzed again, but this time it was a news alert. One of our competitors had just announced a major acquisition. The timing was interesting, just a day before our own announcement. I would need to discuss this with the communications team tonight. Olivia, honestly, can you put that phone away for 5 minutes? Mom called from across the patio. Family. Time is for family, not whatever little emergency your website is having." Several relatives chuckled, and I felt my cheeks warm despite myself. 34 years old, running $1 billion company, and my mother could still make me feel like a scolded teenager. "Sorry," I said, slipping the phone into my pocket. As the afternoon wore on, I found myself increasingly withdrawn, responding with polite smiles and noncommittal answers. Kenneth tried again to engage the family in a conversation about my work, but Dad smoothly redirected to Michael's latest courtroom victory. I was contemplating making an early exit when Jessica suddenly straightened, her posture shifting to alert professional mode. "He's early," she hissed to Kenneth, frantically smoothing her hair. "William's here already. Mom, Dad, he's pulling into the driveway." The energy in the backyard immediately transformed, everyone subtly adjusting positions and expressions, preparing to impress the arriving VIP. I couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of it all. If they only knew what tomorrow's business headlines would reveal. I stepped back, moving toward the edge of the gathering. Part of me was tempted to slip away before the big reveal, to avoid the inevitable awkwardness. But another part, the part that had endured years of dismissal and underestimation, wanted to stay. Perhaps it was finally time for my family to see me clearly. My mother bustled around, adjusting flower arrangements and straightening tablecloths. "Everyone look presentable. Jessica, stand by the entrance to greet him properly. Eleanor, Richard, Charles, move those cocktails out of sight." Jessica was visibly nervous, her usual confidence wavering as she positioned herself strategically near the patio entrance. "Remember," she stage whispered to everyone, "William is extremely influential. His opinion of me, of us, could impact my entire career trajectory." Dad nodded solemnly, as if preparing to meet royalty. "We understand the stakes, Jessica. We'll make you proud." I lingered near the refreshment table, curious about the man himself. William Reynolds had a reputation as a shrewd but fair business leader. In our limited interactions during acquisition negotiations, I'd found him to be perceptive and straightforward, if somewhat traditional in his approach. "Olivia," Mom called, noticing my relaxed posture. "At least try to look professional. First, impressions matter." Before I could respond, a relative I barely recognized asked, "Who's that woman by the drinks? Should she be helping in the kitchen?" My mother glanced over, then laughed dismissively. "She's just a secretary, ignore her." Olivia never quite found her path like Jessica did. The casual cruelty of the comment hung in the air. Jessica laughed, nervously, her eyes darting to me with what might have been a flicker of guilt. Kenneth frowned but remained silent, caught in the uncomfortable position between family loyalty and basic decency. I felt the familiar sting, sharper than usual after a day of accumulated slights. For a brief moment, I considered walking out, driving away and finally closing this chapter of my life. Why continue subjecting myself to this? Tomorrow's news would reveal everything anyway, without me having to witness their reactions firsthand. But before I could make a decision, a tall, distinguished man in his early 60s appeared at the patio entrance. William Reynolds looked exactly as he had during our video conferences, impeccably dressed even in casual weekend attire, observant eyes taking in every detail of the gathering. Jessica rushed forward. "William, thank you so much for coming. Let me introduce you to my family." He smiled politely, but his attention had already shifted. His gaze scanned the backyard, bypassing Jessica's eager introductions, until it landed on me. His expression transformed from polite interest to genuine surprise. "Olivia Parker?" he said, moving past a confused Jessica toward where I stood. The entire gathering fell silent, all eyes tracking this unexpected interaction. William approached me with his hand extended. "Madam CEO, I didn't expect you here. What a pleasant surprise." Silence deepened, becoming almost tangible. Jessica's face drained of color, her mouth opening and closing without sound. My mother gripped my father's arm so tightly her knuckles whitened. "Hello, William," I said calmly, shaking his hand. Nice to see you in person after all our calls. Indeed. I was just reviewing the final paperwork this morning. He glanced around, seeming to notice the stunned expressions. Have I said something inappropriate? Jessica found her voice first, though it emerged as a strangled whisper. You know my sister? William looked between us, realization dawning. Your sister? Olivia Parker is your sister? The Olivia Parker? He chuckled. Well, that explains the resemblance, though I certainly wouldn't have made the connection from our business dealings. My father stepped forward, confusion etched across his face. Business dealings? I don't understand. William turned to him with raised eyebrows. Mr. Parker, your daughter is one of the most respected CEOs in the technology sector. Surely you're aware that Acumen Solutions has been negotiating to acquire Morgan Financial Group for the past 6 months? The collective gasp was almost comical. Jessica swayed slightly, and Kenneth moved quickly to steady her. Acquire? She repeated faintly. That's impossible. Morgan is worth $300 million at current market valuation, William finished, for her. A significant investment, certainly, but well within Acumen's capabilities. The board approved the final terms yesterday. My mother sank into a nearby chair. Olivia is a secretary, she said weakly. William laughed, assuming she was joking. Hardly. Ms. Parker founded Acumen Solutions 8 years ago. The company is currently valued at over $2 billion and employs more than 400 people across 3 continents. He glanced at me. Though she does maintain an unusually low profile for someone of her stature, most CEOs in her position would be far more visible. Every eye in the gathering turned to me, expressions ranging from shock to disbelief to dawning embarrassment. Is this true? Dad asked, his voice uncharacteristically small. I nodded simply. It is. Jessica seemed to be processing this information in slow motion. You're acquiring Morgan, my company? Her voice rose slightly. I've spent 8 years working my way up, and you're just buying it? The acquisition has been in development for some time, I explained gently. It's nothing personal, Jessica. Morgan has infrastructure and client relationships that complement our expansion goals. Nothing personal? She repeated incredulously. You're becoming my boss, and you didn't say anything? Through all those family dinners where I talked about my work, my promotion, you just sat there knowing? The accusation hung between us, highlighting the fundamental disconnect. All those years when I'd tried to share my successes only to be dismissed or ignored. All the conversations redirected to Jessica's conventional achievements. The subtle and not so subtle messaging that my path wasn't worth discussing. Would you have believed me if I'd told you? I asked quietly. Her silence was answer enough. William, sensing the tension, attempted to smooth over the moment. Well, this is certainly an unexpected turn of events, but perhaps a fortunate one. Family connections can strengthen business relationships. He smiled uncertainly, clearly regretting his role in the revelation. The gathering remained frozen, in shocked tableau. Jessica pale and speechless, my parents visibly struggling to reorganize their understanding of their middle child, relatives exchanging bewildered glances and whispers, and me, standing calmly at the center of a storm I hadn't created but could no longer avoid. A tense silence enveloped the gathering as my family struggled to reconcile the daughter they thought they knew with the revelation William Reynolds had just delivered. It was my cousin Tyler who broke the spell, laughing nervously. This has to be some kind of joke, right? Olivia's company buying Morgan Financial? That's not possible. William raised an eyebrow. I assure you it's no joke. The acquisition will be announced publicly tomorrow morning. Acumen Solutions has been strategically expanding its financial technology division for the past 18 months. Morgan Financial's client base and infrastructure make it an ideal addition to the portfolio. My father cleared his throat, his expression caught between confusion and the beginning of what looked like embarrassment. Olivia never mentioned We had no idea that her company was so substantial. Substantial? William looked genuinely surprised. Mr. Parker, Acumen Solutions is one of the fastest-growing tech companies of the decade. Their integrated platform revolutionized how nonprofit organizations manage resources. Then they expanded into healthcare systems, government contracts, and now financial services. He turned to me. I assumed your family would be your biggest champions, given what you've accomplished. The implication hung heavily in the air. If my family didn't know about my success, it wasn't because I hadn't achieved it. Jessica found her voice, though it trembled slightly. Why didn't you tell us? All these years, listening to us talk about my career, my promotion, you just sat there knowing you were… What? Some tech mogul? There was genuine hurt beneath her indignation, which I hadn't expected. I'd prepared myself for anger, defensiveness, perhaps even accusations of deception. But not pain. I did try to tell you, I said quietly. Many times, actually. When? My mother demanded, her voice sharp. When did you ever tell us you were running $1 billion company? Memories flashed through my mind. The dinner 6 years ago when I'd mentioned securing our first major client, only to have the conversation immediately redirected to Jessica's new apartment. The Christmas gathering where I'd tried to share news about our expansion to Europe, but no one had asked a single follow-up question. The countless times my little startup had been dismissed as a hobby rather than a career. 3 Thanksgivings ago, I said, I mentioned that our company had been valued at over $100 million. Dad asked if Jessica had told me about her new company car. 2 Christmases ago, I talked about opening our Tokyo office. Mom changed the subject to Michael's girlfriend's family connections. Last summer, I started to explain our healthcare platform, and Aunt Catherine interrupted to ask when I was going to get a real job with benefits. My relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances, recognition dawning on some faces. But you never pushed back, Jessica argued. You never corrected us when we assumed things about your career. Would you have believed me? I asked again. Or would you have thought I was exaggerating to compete with you? Her silence was telling. William, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding, attempted to steer the conversation back to professional ground. Ms. Parker's leadership style is actually well known in the industry for being understated but highly effective. She lets results speak for themselves rather than seeking personal recognition. And the results have been extraordinary, he continued. Acumen's employee retention rate is among the highest in the tech sector. The company consistently outperforms profit projections while maintaining ethical business practices. Just last month, the Innovation Council named Olivia Visionary of the Year, though I believe you declined to attend the ceremony. He looked at me questioningly. It conflicted with Michael's law firm celebration, I explained. The event I'd skipped to sit at the kids' table during yet another family gathering where my achievements went unacknowledged. My father ran a hand through his thinning hair, visibly struggling to adjust his perception. But you drive that practical car, live in that modest apartment. I couldn't help but smile. Dad, my practical car is a limited production electric vehicle that had a 20-person waiting list. My modest apartment is a penthouse loft in Tribeca that was featured in Architectural Digest last year, though they respected my privacy by not using my name. But you never acted successful, my mother protested. You never talked about important meetings or big deals like Jessica does. The unfairness of this statement hung in the air. I hadn't acted successful by their metrics. I didn't name drop or boast. I didn't push for attention or validation. And because of that, they'd assumed there was nothing worth validating. Kenneth suddenly spoke up. Actually, Eleanor, she did. Remember last Christmas when Olivia was on her phone and you told her to put it away? She mentioned it was an urgent business matter, and you said, and I quote, "Whatever emergency your little website is having can wait." His tone was gentle but firm. That emergency was probably a multi-million-dollar decision. My mother's face flushed. How were we supposed to know? You never made it clear that your work was important. Because in this family, Kenneth replied before I could, importance has always been measured by how loudly it's announced, not by its actual value. Jessica turned to William, professional panic overtaking family drama. This doesn't affect my position, does it? The promotion I just received? William hesitated. That will ultimately be Ms. Parker's decision, as CEO of the parent company. But if I may offer an observation, your sister doesn't strike me as someone who makes business decisions based on personal feelings. All eyes turned to me again. The acquisition isn't about Jessica, I confirmed. It's about integrating Morgan's financial infrastructure with our existing systems to create better solutions for underserved markets. Personnel decisions will be based on merit and organizational needs, nothing else. Jessica didn't look reassured. But you'll be my boss. My sister will be my boss. Technically, I'll be your boss's boss, I corrected gently. Day-to-day operations will continue under the current management structure, at least initially. Father, ever focused on the bottom line, seemed to be mentally recalculating my place in his world. $2 billion, he murmured. Olivia, why didn't you ever— We could have helped you, advised you. I felt a flash of the old hurt. Like you advised me to get a real job, or to follow Jessica's path instead of pursuing my own vision. We were trying to protect you, Mom insisted. The business world is harsh, especially for women. We didn't want you to be disappointed. I understand that, I said, and I did. Their dismissal had come from a place of concern, however misguided. But protection should never mean dismissing someone's dreams. It should mean supporting them, even when you don't fully understand the path they've chosen. William cleared his throat. If I might add, Olivia's reputation in the industry is exceptional. She's known for identifying overlooked opportunities and building solutions that create value across multiple sectors. Several of my colleagues on various boards consider her one of the most innovative leaders in technology today. My aunts and uncles, who had been watching this exchange with varying degrees of shock and fascination, now regarded me with entirely new expressions: curiosity, respect, and in some cases, the calculating look of people reassessing a relationship they might be able to benefit from. Well, my cousin Rachel said with a forced laugh, I guess we'll all have to stop offering Olivia career advice now. Nervous laughter rippled through the gathering. The tension was shifting, family dynamics realigning in real time around this new reality. Jessica remained silent, her expression unreadable. The competitive dynamic that had defined our relationship since childhood was suddenly, irrevocably altered. The golden child was now reporting, albeit indirectly, to the family underachiever. William, having inadvertently triggered this family reckoning, discreetly checked his watch. I should probably take my leave. Jessica, we can discuss transition details at the office on Monday. He turned to me with genuine respect. Olivia, a pleasure as always. I look forward to finalizing everything tomorrow. As he departed, the facade of the perfect family gathering had been completely dismantled. In its place was something raw and uncertain, but perhaps more authentic than anything we'd shared in years. My father approached me, his expression a complex mix of emotions. Olivia, I don't know what to say. I'm sorry if we made you feel your work wasn't valuable. It's not about apologies, Dad, I replied. It's about seeing people for who they actually are, not who you expect them to be. The gathering had irrevocably changed. The carefully maintained family hierarchy had been upended, and no one quite knew how to proceed. But beneath the awkwardness and shock, I sensed the possibility of something new beginning. As William's car disappeared down the driveway, the family gathering dissolved into separate clusters of intense conversation. Relatives who had barely acknowledged me for years suddenly found urgent reasons to reconnect, their curiosity barely disguised as casual interest. Olivia, we should get together for lunch soon, Aunt Catherine suggested, the same woman who had been trying to set me up with recently divorced insurance adjusters an hour earlier. I've always said the family doesn't spend enough quality time together. I smiled politely but made no commitments. The transparent shift in their behavior was both amusing and slightly sad. Had my worth to them always been so closely tied to external validation? Jessica had disappeared immediately after William's departure, with Kenneth following close behind. I found them in our old childhood bedroom, Jessica sitting rigidly on the edge of the bed while Kenneth stood by the window. "Can we talk?" I asked from the doorway. Jessica looked up, her expression a complex mixture of hurt, anger, and embarrassment. 8 years, she said quietly. 8 years I've worked at Morgan, climbing every rung of the ladder, playing by all the rules. And you just buy the entire company? Kenneth gave me a sympathetic look but stayed silent, recognizing this was between sisters. I took a deep breath. The acquisition isn't about you, Jess. It's a business decision that's been in development for months. But you knew, she exclaimed, her voice rising. All those times I talked about my work, my promotion, how important this opportunity with William was. You knew you were negotiating to become my boss. I didn't agree to the acquisition to undermine you, I said calmly. Morgan has client relationships and infrastructure that complement our expansion goals. It's business, not personal. Jessica laughed bitterly. Not personal? You deliberately humiliated me in front of our entire family, not to mention my boss. That wasn't my intention, I replied. William's appearance today was as much a surprise to me as it was to you. I had no idea he was planning to stop by. But you could have warned me beforehand about the acquisition. I sat down beside her on the bed, maintaining some distance. Would that really have been better? To tell you privately that your company was being acquired, potentially putting you in a position of having information you couldn't ethically share with your colleagues. She was silent, considering this. Besides, I continued more gently. When exactly should I have mentioned it? When Mom was dismissing my career as playing with computers? When Dad was suggesting I apply for an entry-level position at your firm? Or maybe during one of the many family gatherings where no one bothered to ask me a single question about my work? Kenneth spoke up. She has a point, Jess. Your family hasn't exactly created an environment where Olivia could share her successes. Jessica shot him a betrayed look, but didn't argue. After a moment, she asked in a smaller voice, "What happens to my position now?" Nothing changes immediately, I assured her. The acquisition is about integrating systems and expanding market reach, not restructuring personnel. Your performance will be evaluated on the same metrics as before. Except my sister will be judging that performance, she pointed out. No, your direct supervisors will continue to manage your department. I run the parent company, Jess. I'm not going to be reviewing your quarterly reports personally. She seemed marginally relieved, though still conflicted. Did you ever think about telling me? Just me, not the rest of the family? The question caught me off guard. In all honesty, I hadn't. Jessica and I had never been confidants, our relationship defined more by competition than connection. But saying that would only deepen the hurt. I separated my family life from my professional life a long time ago, I said carefully. It seemed easier that way. Easier than dealing with our parents' reactions, she concluded. It wasn't a question. Something like that. We sat in silence for a moment, the walls of our childhood bedroom witnessing a recalibration of our adult relationship. Meanwhile, downstairs, the dynamics had shifted dramatically. When I returned to the gathering, conversations hushed momentarily before resuming with forced casualness. My father had opened the expensive wine I'd brought, now treating it with reverent appreciation. My mother fluttered nervously between guests, her usual confident hosting demeanor shaken. "Olivia," Dad called, gesturing me over to where he stood with Uncle Peter. "I was just telling Peter about that advice you gave earlier regarding investment in tech corridor peripheral areas. Very insightful. The same advice he had appropriated without acknowledgement just hours earlier." "Thanks, Dad," I said simply. "Your Father tells me you've built quite the company, Uncle Peter said, studying me with new interest. We should discuss potential collaborations. My investment group is always looking for promising opportunities. I noticed several cousins edging closer, smartphones discreetly checking my company's website. Oh my God, I heard one whisper. Look at the client list. Google, Microsoft, the Gates Foundation. My mother approached, touching my arm tentatively. Darling, I've set aside some of the special cheesecake for you. I remember it was always your favorite. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same family that had relegated me to the kids' table was now treating me like the guest of honor. The transformation would have been comical if it weren't so telling about conditional love and validation. Michael, my younger brother, was perhaps the most genuine in his reaction. He found me alone on the patio steps later that afternoon. So, my big sister is a secret billionaire, he said, sitting beside me. Not quite a billionaire personally, I corrected. The company is valued at over $2 billion. He whistled low. Still, I don't even know what to say. I feel like a complete jerk for never really listening when you talked about your work. You weren't as dismissive as Mom and Dad, I offered. Maybe not, but I wasn't supportive either. He looked genuinely regretful. I always just assumed Jessica was the successful one because she talked about it more and fit Mom and Dad's definition of achievement. It's not your fault, I said. Our family has a very specific measuring stick for success. A measuring stick you apparently broke and then used to build a multi-billion-dollar company. He grinned, then grew serious again. But still, I should have paid more attention. I'm sorry. His apology felt sincere in a way our parents' awkward attempts had not. Thanks, Michael. That means a lot. So what happens now? He asked. With the family, I mean. Everything's different. It was the question I'd been asking myself since William's unexpected revelation. The comfortable invisibility I'd maintained for years had been shattered. My achievements were now undeniable, impossible for my family to minimize or dismiss. But their sudden interest and approval felt hollow after years of indifference. I don't know, I admitted. I guess we'll have to find a new normal. As the gathering began to wind down, my mother pulled me aside, her expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. I don't understand why you never told us, she said, genuine confusion in her voice. We're your parents. We would have been proud. The simplicity of her statement belied years of evidence to the contrary. Would you, Mom? Because I did tell you, many times. You just weren't interested in the kind of success I was pursuing. That's not fair, Olivia. How were we supposed to know your little startup would become so significant? By listening when I talked about it, I replied gently. By asking questions instead of changing the subject. By believing I could succeed on my own terms instead of pushing me to follow Jessica's path. She had no response to that, but her expression suggested she was at least considering my perspective for perhaps the first time. As guests began departing, each made a point of saying goodbye to me specifically, many slipping in requests for future meetings or mentioning relatives seeking jobs or investment. The transparent shift in their treatment was both validating and vaguely disappointing. Jessica and Kenneth were among the last to leave. Kenneth gave me a warm hug and whispered, "For what it's worth, I've always thought you were extraordinary. This just confirms what I already knew." Jessica's goodbye was more reserved, our new professional connection complicating our already complex relationship. "I'll see you Monday, I suppose. Or at least I'll see your company representatives." "It's going to be okay, Jess," I assured her. "This doesn't have to change things between us." She gave me a sad smile. "It already has." She wasn't wrong. The revelation had irreversibly altered our family dynamic. The carefully maintained hierarchy, with Jessica at the top and me somewhere near the bottom, had been upended. The question was whether we could build something healthier in its place. As I prepared to leave myself, my father approached for a private word. "Olivia, I need you to know that we always wanted what was best for you. Perhaps we were wrong about what. That looked like, but our intentions were good. I know, Dad, I said, and meant it. You wanted to protect me from disappointment. Yes, exactly, he said, relieved at my understanding. The odds of success in that technology world are so slim, we didn't want you to get hurt. But protection shouldn't mean dismissing someone's dreams, I replied. Sometimes the greatest support you can offer is simply believing something is possible, even when you don't understand it. He nodded slowly, considering my words. I suppose we've all been living with certain assumptions for a very long time. We have, I agreed. The question is whether we're willing to let them go and see each other more clearly now. It was the first honest conversation we'd had in years, perhaps ever. As I drove away from my parents' home that evening, I felt both drained and strangely liberated. The family's perception of me had been shattered, for better or worse. What would rise from the fragments remained to be seen. 3 weeks after the fateful family BBQ, I stood in my penthouse kitchen, preparing coffee for my father's first visit to my actual home. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a spectacular view of the city skyline, the morning light illuminating the thoughtfully designed space that perfectly reflected my personal aesthetic. Clean lines, warm textures, and subtle sophistication. The doorbell rang precisely at 9, my father's punctuality unchanged despite everything else that had shifted between us. I took a deep breath before opening the door. Good morning, Dad. I greeted him with a genuine smile. He stood awkwardly in the hallway, holding a small potted plant. Your mother thought you might like this for your home. Though now that I see it, this place hardly needs help. With decoration. His eyes widened as he took in the expansive living area. Olivia, this is incredible. Thank you. Come in, coffee's ready. He followed me inside, his gaze traveling over the custom furnishings, original artwork, and state-of-the-art technology seamlessly integrated into the design. His expression reflected a man recalibrating his entire understanding of his daughter in real time. Please, sit. I gestured to the dining area overlooking the park below. How's Mom doing? She's adjusting, he said carefully. We both are. It's not every day you discover your daughter is running a billion-dollar company you knew nothing about. I poured the coffee, giving myself a moment to gather my thoughts. This conversation had been 3 weeks in the making, after several stilted phone calls and one uncomfortable family dinner where everyone had tried too hard to pretend everything was normal. Dad, I asked you here because I think we need to talk honestly, just the two of us. He nodded, looking uncharacteristically vulnerable. I agree. Why did you never take my career seriously? I asked directly. Even before you knew the scale of what I'd built. Why was my path always treated as less valuable than Jessica's? He stared into his coffee for a long moment before answering. I was afraid for you, he admitted. The business world I understood, the corporate ladder Jessica was climbing, had clear metrics for success. There was security in that path. But yours? He shook his head. I didn't understand it. All I saw were the risks, the potential for failure, and I couldn't bear to watch you get hurt. But in trying to protect me from failure, you couldn't see my success, I said gently. No, I couldn't, he acknowledged. And that's on me, not you. The simple admission surprised me. My father had never been one to acknowledge mistakes easily. I pushed you toward what I knew, he continued. What had worked for me? I thought, that was what good parents did, steer their children toward safe harbors. And when I chose to chart my own course, I was terrified, he confessed. Every time you talked about your company, all I could think was 9 out of 10 startups fail. I couldn't see past the statistics to the actual work you were doing. That was my failure of imagination. His honesty was disarming. I'd expected defensiveness, perhaps even continued attempts to justify their behavior. Instead, he was offering something I'd never received from him before. Vulnerable self-reflection. I never needed you to understand the technical aspects of what I do, I told him. I just needed you to believe in me, even when my path looked different from the one you would have chosen. I know that now, he said quietly. Your mother and I have been doing a lot of talking these past weeks about the ways we measured success, about how we treated you differently from Jessica and Michael. He looked up, meeting my eyes directly. We were wrong, Olivia, and I'm deeply sorry for that. The apology I'd wanted for so long landed differently than I'd imagined. There was no triumphant vindication, just a quiet sadness for all the years of connection we'd missed. Thank you for saying that, I replied. It means a lot. The irony is, he continued with a sad smile, you're the most successful of all of us, and you did it entirely without our support. That's humbling, to say the least. I didn't do it to prove anything to you, I assured him. I know. You did it because you believed in your vision. That makes it even more extraordinary. He glanced around my beautiful home again. All of this? You built it yourself. While we were dismissing your work as a hobby. I decided to be completely honest. That hurt, Dad. Every time you suggested I get a real job or follow Jessica's path. Every time Mom changed the subject, when I tried to share my accomplishments. It hurt. He nodded, accepting the pain he'd caused without defensiveness. I can't change the past. I can only do better going forward. He hesitated, then asked, would you be willing to tell me about your company now? I want to understand what you've built. It was a small olive branch, but sincerely offered. For the next hour, I explained Acumen Solutions' evolution from a small startup focused on nonprofit software to a global technology leader. Dad listened attentively, asking thoughtful questions without once comparing my accomplishments to Jessica's or suggesting how I could have done things differently. By the time he left, something had shifted between us. Not forgiveness exactly, but the beginning of a new understanding. As we hugged goodbye, he said, I'm proud of you, Olivia, not because of what you've achieved, impressive as it is, but because of who you are. I should have seen that much sooner. The healing continued in unexpected ways over the following months. My mother's approach was less direct, but equally genuine. She began sending me articles about women in technology, sometimes with questions that revealed her attempts to understand my world. Small gestures, but meaningful nonetheless. Jessica proved to be the most complicated relationship to rebuild. The Morgan acquisition proceeded smoothly from a business perspective, but personally, we struggled to find our new equilibrium. Our monthly lunches were initially stilted, both of us unsure how to relate when our established roles had been so dramatically reversed. It's strange, she admitted during our third post-revelation meeting. I always defined myself as the successful sister, the one who had it all figured out. Now I don't know who I am in relation to you. You're still successful, Jess, I pointed out. The acquisition doesn't change your accomplishments. But it changes how I see them, how everyone sees them. She stirred her coffee absently. I always thought I was on this impressive trajectory, and you were the one who needed guidance. Finding out you've been so far ahead all along, it makes me question everything I thought I knew. Success isn't a competition, I said. We're on different paths, but that doesn't make either less valid. Says the billionaire, she replied with a hint of her old competitive spirit, but her smile softened the words. Not quite a billionaire, I corrected automatically, then realized she was teasing me. Gradually, our conversations became more authentic. Jessica's initial resentment gave way to genuine curiosity about my work. Meanwhile, I gained new appreciation for her skills navigating corporate structures I'd always avoided. We would never be best friends. Our personalities and values were too different for that. But we were finding a way to be sisters without the unhealthy competition our parents had fostered. 6 months after William Reynolds's unexpected visit upended our family dynamic, I hosted dinner at my home for the entire extended family. It was the first time I'd opened my private space to them, a conscious choice to fully integrate my personal and professional identities. As I watched them move through my home, admiring the artwork that reflected my tastes, studying the family photos displayed alongside industry awards I'd finally brought out of storage, I realized something important. I was no longer seeking their validation. For so long, part of me had continued showing up at family gatherings hoping they would finally see me, truly see me. But now that they could, I understood that their recognition had never been the point. My success wasn't validated by their acknowledgement of it. My worth wasn't determined by where they seated me at dinner. The real victory wasn't in proving them wrong. It was in building a life that was authentically mine, regardless of their approval. Later that evening, as conversations flowed more naturally than they ever had at my parents' carefully orchestrated events, Kenneth found me on the balcony. "Quite the transformation," he observed, nodding toward where my mother was genuinely laughing with my chief financial officer, whom I'd invited to help break the ice. "It's progress," I agreed. "Slow, sometimes awkward progress. You know what I admire most?" he said. "You never rejected them, even when they failed to see your value. You kept showing up year after year. That takes extraordinary strength." I considered his words. I think I needed to prove something to myself, that I could succeed on my own terms without cutting ties with my past. And now I don't need to prove anything to anyone, I replied, including myself. Inside, Jessica was describing a project she was leading at work, her voice carrying a new confidence that came from within rather than from external validation. My father was listening to my brother Michael with genuine interest rather than measuring his words against some predefined metric of success. My mother had stopped fluttering anxiously around guests and was simply enjoying conversations as they unfolded. Small changes perhaps, but significant ones. The healing wasn't complete, and some patterns were too deeply ingrained to vanish overnight. But we were learning to see each other more clearly, to value our differences rather than forcing conformity. The journey from that humiliating BBQ to this moment of genuine connection hadn't been easy. There had been difficult conversations, painful recognitions, and moments when old patterns threatened to reassert themselves. But there had also been growth, on all sides. I no longer needed my family to understand every aspect of my work or to celebrate my successes in specific ways. And they were learning that love shouldn't be conditional on meeting predetermined expectations. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, my mother hugged me tightly. "Thank you for giving us another chance," she whispered, "for giving me another chance to be the mother you deserve." "We're all learning together," I told her. Later, after everyone had gone and I stood alone in my quiet apartment, I reflected on the strange path that had brought me here. The years of being underestimated had actually given me the freedom to define success on my own terms, without the burden of others' expectations. In some ways, their dismissal had been a gift, pushing me to find validation from within rather than from external sources. The true lesson wasn't about proving my worth to others. It was about recognizing it within myself all along. As I looked out over the city lights, I felt a profound sense of peace. The next chapter of my family story was still being written, but for the first time, we were all holding the pen together, creating something more authentic than what had come before. Being underestimated had once been my greatest hurt. Now I understood it had also been my greatest strength. What about you? Has someone's underestimation ever become your superpower? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that sometimes being underestimated is the greatest gift of all. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the only validation that truly matters is the one you give yourself.